Attention, please. Thank you. We'd like to start our program by introducing Reverend Wayne Yeager from Massillon. Would you remain standing then for the Pledge of Allegiance right after the prayer?
Let us bow our heads in prayer. For the beauty of this day, for the joy of your creation, for the gift of life, for Paul Brown, the influence and example he has given to so many, playing in the game and on the field of life, we thank you, Lord. In this world, Lord, we each have our own place. You, the far-sighted coach, have planned it for us. Grant that both our playing and working on the field of life may be done in such a manner that when your last whistle interrupts our lives, we shall be chosen for the championship of heaven. Bless this food and fellowship. In the name of Jesus Christ we ask it. Amen. The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See if you can get yourselves comfortable. If you want to adjust your chairs, please do that at this time. We may still have people coming in as the program goes on. It'll be fine. We'd like to acknowledge, first of all, the printed bit of information that each one of you received as you sat down, and also this lovely poster up here. Some of you may not have noticed this, but Paul David, where is Paul? I think he's sitting close by. Would you stand and thank you so much? Okay. Just indicates a little bit of the friendship that goes on through the years when something like that is done. Old Steve Bazika. That's interesting. It's my age. You know, after getting prepared for this program, it almost felt to me like this was going to be Paul Brown's life, like I'm Ralph Edwards. It's not really going to be your life, Paul, but all of your friends that are here, it'll seem like that. So maybe this is your life, Paul Brown.
First of all, after playing 12 years with Paul Brown, high school, college, and pro, it gives me great pleasure for the Hall of Fame Club to give him this lifetime membership card from the Pro Football Hall of Fame Club. Paul, it's our honor. Thank you much. I've been waiting for Grozen, Lavelli, and Shaffrath, but I haven't seen them yet. Maybe they will make it. I don't know. Anyway, I'll start with Billy Reynolds, the University of Pittsburgh, played halfback for Cleveland. On offense and pound for pound, he was as tough as players you ever run into. Billy Reynolds, stand up, hold your applause, and we'll wind up at the end of it. Billy, stand up, stand up.
Get off your knees.
He got some legs that kind of bends a little bit. Massillon's own Tommy James from the glory years. He had Paul in high school in Ohio State and went to Detroit and got a little trouble up there, but he joined the Browns and played great football. Tommy? Bob Gain, all-pro tackle, Started in 1952, and I remember him as somebody breaking his jaw in the first game he got in. Brother Jim Houston, he was 9 years old when I played in 1946. He looks 9 now, doesn't he? He was captain and linebacker and #1 draft choice in 1960. Danny Lavelli didn't make it. Lou the Toad Groves is not here yet. They're supposed to be. They said they would be. My good friend, Hall of Famer Bill Willis, Ohio State, and also right guard. I played right offense. Bill played right defense. And everybody knows Canton's own Marion Motley, the greatest fullback of his time. Marion, now give them all a big hand. Wait a minute. Give me 15 yards. Tony Adamley, who was captain of the team, Dr. Tony Adamley. You know, I was surprised that they held a lot of them from Ohio State, so Paul had a real nucleus. Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
I think if those fellas arrive, Lynn, I don't know where you're going to fit them in.
Shafrad just walked in.
Well, he'll fit in all right. Senator Shafrath, when you work your way up here slowly, we'll get to you here in just a minute. But while you're doing that, let's give a round of applause to a fellow who's talked with this group several times, who came down to visit with us today, Sam Rutigliano. Sam. You know the club we have is not political. At least it wasn't until now. That Shafrath has arrived. Do you want to introduce him, Lynn? Sure you do.
Okay. Hello, Senator. The Senator Dick Shafrath. All right. I've been here before. I've been here before. He hadn't. He was an offensive tackle on the 1964 championship team, but I don't think he can play tackle today. How much you weigh?
205.
205. Well, that's a good defensive halfback. It's our pleasure to have you with us. Thank you much.
We would like to introduce some other people that were very close to our speaker today, and one of those is none other than Luther Emery, longtime friend, sports editor, and editor of the Massillon paper. Where is Luther? Luther. Been a club member for many years, and thank you for coming and being with us. Bill Edwards. And Bill Edwards, another close friend, teammate, just a lot of good things. He's athletic director and head football coach at Wittenberg, Detroit Lions. Where is Bill?
Bill couldn't make it.
Well,
Hospital.
Is he early?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. In the hospital, all right. Dick Gallagher is here. I know he's here, and we all know Dick, former director of this Hall of Fame. From William and Mary, he was an assistant to Paul Brown, general manager of Buffalo, Dick Gallagher. Another friend, a close friend, a fellow we all know, a fellow who comes to this meeting almost every Monday, has been with us a long time, and probably one of the biggest backers of Massillon football that we could find, Tink Ulrich. Well, until I get to the next fella, another Massillonian. He's been known as the secretary to a Ohio high school football for as long as I can remember. And you know who I'm talking about, none other than Ducky Schroeder. I'm going to introduce Earl Schreiber, although he needs no introduction. And Earl's going to introduce our main speaker. But at the end of Paul Brown's speech, Earl is going to come back and tell us something very special about our man Paul Brown. Earl Schreiber.
Thank you. I've been waiting a long time to do this, and I'm going to take as short a time as possible. I came here to hear Paul Brown just as you did. Many times I've been asked, how did the Hall of Fame start and who owns it? As far as I can tell, the football fans of America own it, and that's you, otherwise why would you be here? How did it start? There are several stories in the repository, and with the blessing of Clay Horn, the question was, why should there be a Hall of Fame for pro football anywhere but in this territory? Many people read that story, but it seemed to be important to Mr. Umstadt, Mr. Henry Timken, and Mr. Herb Markley. They decided that the Hall of Fame should be here, and Henry Timken hosted a dinner at Congress Lake. In attendance, Paul Belden Sr., Mr. Umstadt, Herb Hoover, Clayton Horn, and myself. After some discussion, we asked Paul Brown how we should proceed. His direction was to secure permission from the league and get their blessing. Number two, to locate a site, find the money, design a building, and then find something to put in it. Henry Timken and Herb Hoover each agreed to give us $5,000 for startup money. We formed committees and began the long trip to the sanction of the Hall of Fame. Paul then told us that it would be wise to visit some of the then owners, at that time only 12, and explain to them what we had in mind and tell them how we hoped to accomplish the mission. We visited Hallis in Chicago, Rooney in Pittsburgh, Marshall in Washington, Mara in New York, Roselle at that time, brand new at the job, and in Philadelphia. Also Anderson in Detroit, and Paul took care of Cleveland. Clayton Horn, Mr. Umstadt, and I then made one visit to a league meeting in Miami. Shortly thereafter, at the Warwick Hotel in New York, Mr. Umstadt presented our case. He told the people assembled, the 12 owners, that we could provide the money, and we guessed it would cost about $350,000, and that Timken would provide the first $100,000. At that point, he got their attention. A short time thereafter, in San Francisco, it was agreed that the Hall of Fame should come to this territory. One more important thing. In addition to Paul pointing the way for us and opening the doors to these club owners, he found a way to get them to agree to play a preseason game. 10 of the 12 teams agreed, and they also agreed to play that game for the handsome sum of $15,000. Paul, today it costs $15,000 to suit up a player, doesn't it? In addition to the startup problems in the diagram that Paul gave us, when the two leagues merged, Paul made arrangements for us to meet in New York with Lamar Hunt and Bud Adams. They have been important parts of our board of directors. These two gentlemen in 18 years each missed one annual meeting. The Hall of Fame is important to them. After the first edition was built, and they helped us secure the money for that, $400 of the $500,000 it required, and through the efforts of Gallagher and Stutter and Chesley, we found out that the television program was extremely important to us. Paul helped us along the way with that. Now, many people in this territory believe that their contribution of time and money is the reason we are a success. That's good. That's important to us. But I am aware that without our speaker, Paul Brown, we wouldn't be here and there would be no Hall of Fame here. Paul.
Chairman Earl and gentlemen, first of all, I thank you for a rousing reception. I appreciate it, and makes a fella coming home feel pretty good. Coming here, it's like old home week. Came up with my wife Mary last evening, and as we are coming by on 30, they've changed the route. It doesn't go into Massillon like it used to. And I stayed on it too long, and I said, well, let's just go in. It was getting in the evening. I'll take a run around the Hall of Fame and see what's happened. Too late to go in. And we drove about it, and what a swell development. And as I said to her, ironic that you should mention old Bill Umstadt, I said, I wonder what old Bill Umstadt would think if he could see this place today. It really is a tremendous accomplishment. I'd like to say this also to you, that I didn't do this for any other reason, my part in it, other than I thought it belonged here. The whole thing started here. It's so logical. At the time the political forces were fighting about where to put it, some of it didn't make sense. I know one city wanted to put it in a shopping center, and one wanted to put it in a small town where they'd had a semi-pro team, Latrobe, I think it was. And to make a long story short, the whole thing, professional football, the origins of it, started here. Now, as time has gone on, I can say to you, no other city, and I've been down that automobile ride a good number of times. The day of the inductions, you know, the big party in this, when we ride down and the guys are inducted. No place else, except in this city and this area, have the background to do what has been done. So don't give me any credit at all, other than the only thing I did was it just belonged here, and it was simple, and it certainly has been made a success by the people who have carried it on. Coming up here, it's a special thing for me. My sister Marion lost her husband, Sherlock Evans. Many of you knew him. He was my brother-in-law, and I get a chance to see her after the sad things, I get a chance to start checking the family graves. Go down to I took my wife yesterday and around to show her some of the landmarks to me, where I lived, and things of this sort. I went down and checked my stadium. With apologies. Seriously, I'm proud of that, and every year, sometime I'm the only guy around here, but I get out and take a walk in just to see how everything looks, and it's a grand thing. Well, I tell you, talking to a bunch of old jocks like this, all of whom have bitten the dust, there's quite an assembly of them. I particularly am surprised that so many of my guys were able to make it. And I got to thinking as they were being introduced, some of the first things that popped into my head. And Little came to town. We didn't even know that he moved to town. His father, I think, got a job in the steel mill by way of the brother or whatever. But at any rate, this husky young guy was in gym class, and Carol Widow said to me, "You said a pretty chunky kid in here, take a look at him." And I went down, and I asked him if he'd ever played football. No, he was from Wolf's Lake, was it? Population 102, I think. I don't know.
Not even that?
Not even that. Well, at any rate, I asked him if he'd like to play football. He says he guessed he would. And so we put him out for spring football, and he said to me, after about 2 weeks of it, he said, "Coach, what do you mean when you say offense and defense?" And I said, "Well, this is a true story. It shows you how much you knew about football." And I said, "Well, on the offense, you just knock a guy down that's in front of you, and on defense, you'll go get the guy with the ball." And that's about the way it worked out. I see Bill and Marion here, and I think back to when Marion, I think of the time he fumbled out in San Francisco, I think it was. The guys had a football with a handle on it, made out of adhesive tape. It was a pretty good looking thing. They presented it to him as they got on the plane, and Bill, his wife, it could have been his girlfriend then. I used to allow the women to come up to camp once while we were in session. Boy, we missed him. We had a lot of fun with it. And Tommy, when I think of Tommy James, I think of his mom and dad. It really is. I got to know them well, and I think Tommy was right in between Massillon and Canton, and had a choice of where he could go to high school. That's correct, isn't it? And you can be certain that I really had nothing to do with where he went. Tell you the truth, they only weighed about 110 pounds, and we didn't know what we were getting. Now the next very learned fellow there you see is Bob Gain. Bob always had more stories about him than any of my other players. He was figure out how this happened, but he really had a pretty wife, still is. And, I always say to him, I don't know how you accomplished this. And she came into the office, he was in Korea, I think. And she had this telegram from him. And he was coming back, and Kitty was all tickled about this, and I looked at it, and it said, "Meet me at the boat if you want to be first." these things really happen. And there's Jim Houston. Jim, you would know the name of the guy, but he was fresh out of Ohio State and wasn't as big as the guy he was catching. It was this big, tall guy from San Francisco.
Bob St. Clair.
Bob St. Clair. And we got the motion pictures after the game. Bob St. Clair must have been 6'7" or 6'9". He's grown since he met him. Anyway, he was opposite Jim, and we got the pictures, and we were curious as to how he was doing, and you know what? We could hardly find him. He was just enveloped by this monster of a man. He really was a great, great veteran football player, and Jim was just fresh out of college, and I'm sure he began to wonder just what in the world he got himself into.
Change positions.
Yeah. And lastly there, and sitting there just big as the old get out, is my doctor, Tony Adamley. I can remember Tony coming back for one last year. I think I always sort of took a little bit of credit that it might have helped him finance the medical world that he was in, but he was obviously towards the end of his career and broke his leg, if I remember. Didn't hurt anything up here, so no harm done, but I always remember him as probably as tough a leader, determined, dogged, and as we ever had. I remember we played in the coast one time, and San Francisco beat us. I think we were behind about 28-0 at the half, and I never forget that Edgar Jones, he said, "Relax, coach," he says, "Otto will get us out of this." Well, Otto wasn't able to get us out of it. We took a terrible beating. It was the only one we lost all year, really, and we weren't working at it. And the next week, Tony had a terrible sprained ankle. You remember this?
Yeah, more like a break, I think.
Might have been. But anyway, boy, did we go after that LA team, and it really put them away. But all I'll say to you guys,
Billy Reynolds.
Billy, yeah. Billy was a punt returner who never put his hand up. You've seen this kind? He couldn't hardly, yeah, he's looking at his nose again. But he was just what Lyndall said, a tough, hard-playing kid. Dick Shafrath, when I first drafted him, I think you were 225, and we thought we could make you up to 235 or 40, which is normal size for an offensive lineman, but very dedicated. I can remember when you were running for senator, when all that business, Woody Hayes called me. He needed some help, and we got it done. So I'm just taking credit for a lot of things here. Well, you're getting me at a time here today when I just finished, like yesterday, our mini camp looking at our new prospects. We went into the draft to try to help our defense. Our offense was number 1 in the league, and our defense was number 20 out of 28. And that's not good enough to win. The fact that we had a good record and didn't get in the playoffs is meaningless. So we drafted, we wanted to help our down line, and we wanted to help our secondary, and we knew we had to get some kicking help. I don't know if you folks are aware of it or not, but there's a rule change. There's only going to be one kickoff from now on in the National League. And if they kick it out of bounds, it's moved 30 yards upfield from where it went out of bounds. You might give you the idea why Cleveland gave up 2 or 3 draft choices to get that place kicker they took in the 3rd round. It's changing that is a good move, and everybody's thinking about it. This takes place, these rules, when they call us the competition committee. It's really sort of the rules committee, and we meet in Maui. A year ago, I'm there and playing golf. with some of my friends, Shula, Eddie LeBaron, Schramm, that was the usual foursome. And I went to the first 9, and then I had an appointment, so I had to leave and come back. So I just left with a hole that was sort of close to the road there to walk back to the clubhouse. That's at Wailea. And I'm walking along the road, and I had a club. I just took a club to walk along with. I don't know why. And the golf club, it wasn't, I think, a wedge or something. And a car came along, and they stopped. It was 2 couples, young, around 30-something. And they said, "Where'd you lose your ball?" I said, this is a true story. They were laughing and grinning about it, and they said, "Could we give you a lift?" I'm sure they thought this poor little old guy walking along there was in trouble. And I said, "Yeah, I'm just going up here about a mile and a quarter up to the clubhouse." And I said, "Get in, we'll give you a lift." So I got in, and I said, "Where are you folks from?" They're obviously on a vacation. And they said, "We're from Canton, Ohio." I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, "I'm from Massillon. I hope I'm not offending you, or you're not going to ask me to get out." They smiled, and we had a nice conversation. Finally said to me, "What did you do in Massillon?" And I said, "Well, I worked for the school system." And they asked me my name, and I told them. And we had sweet nothings and went on. I had a notion to say, "You guys go over and take a look at that stadium and see." But they were probably born 20 years after I left here or whatever. And to make a long story short, I was just a poor little old guy they picked up on the road and did a nice thing for. So to carry it on, the next morning, and this story made me feel better, we got up early, and every morning Shula and LeBaron would play tennis at 7 o'clock. They'd go up, it was in the complex of the hotel. So we go there, and the little Oriental who is serving orange juice for the complex gives them orange juice, and he looks at Shula, and he goes like this. Says, "I know you. Don't I know you?" And Don swelled up and said, "Well, you probably do if you know anything about football." And the guy kept going, and I guess he said, "Earl Campbell." I think it was the only football name he could think of. But if you think we didn't get a little mileage out of it, after my letdown the day before, I figured, well, it can happen to all of us, you know. And you get to thinking you're pretty good. I was thinking about when I was here, and I know that Tommy Henrik was a speaker here. I get the Evening Independent. I usually read the Steve, I think it's Darnschuk, and his column, and that's how I know this. I usually read it, however, after I read the obituary column. But I found out that Tommy'd been here. He was always one of my favorite guys. Years ago, Tommy and I were always partners, and this one he's playing for the Yankees. We'd have a basketball game 2-on-2. Widows and Billy Rohr are on one side, and Paul and Tommy are on against them. We'd play till we dropped. And of course, I've heard all of these baseball stories that only he can tell, and they're always very enjoyable. My real good old friend. Well, we're going to New York to see, this is when he was playing, my wife and I, the World's Fair, and then I was going to go to the ball game to see the game. And I always used to say to Tommy, boy, I really admire you. You're a great fielder. And he'd roll his eyes. That wasn't what he wanted to hear. If you know what I mean. He was a great hitter too. Don't think he wasn't. But we go to the game early, and I wanted to just see. There he was playing pepper like they used to. They put on quite an act, hit him hard, and throw the ball all around. And they were doing that right then behind home plate there. And I said, yes, he's a great fielder. And he said, where are you? Well, he invited me down to the bench. McCarthy was the coach, or the manager. He just sat there. He never said a word that I could figure out. But I was curious in studying this manager of the world's champions, the greatest, and all that. Well, and the big fly ball went out there, and it came between DiMaggio and Henrik, and right at the last minute, they didn't quite run into each other, but DiMaggio stuck out his glove and got it. And I was curious as to what would have been said when they came in. So I'm really watching this, and they come in, and McCarthy doesn't say anything. And so afterwards, I said to Tommy, doesn't he say something about these kind of things? Oh, he says no. He says, now if we would have dropped it or something or not gotten there, that would have been different. He says any physical error, he never mentions. But if it's a mental error, he says you should have been there. You'd have had a few new words. It made an indelible impression on me. In other words, all my coaching life, I'm just a little more tolerant with a physical error than I am a mental error. It was just something that impressed me. And Tommy won that game just through sheer smarts on his part. There was a guy in left field for the other team. His name was Jeff Heath. Jeff Heath. And there's always a lot of talk about Tommy and Jeff Heath. And Tommy took an extra base because Heath sort of lobbed it into the infield. He faked like he was going to stop, and then he went on and made it. And it was a winning run. It was a 2-1 baseball game. And it really, I was proud. You'd have thought I did it myself. This was quite a trip to New York for, when you're coach at Massillon, you get to thinking you're pretty big, important. I'm saying this to the current guy because I went through what he's going through, these things. We were going on this trip. I went down, there was a clothing store in town called Meek Segner's. Any of you remember that? And I got all dolled up. I have a light gray pants with a stripe in them, vertical. I think I looked like the end man in a minstrel show. But the next morning we're going out, going to the elevator in the hotel, and I hear some guy behind me say, geez, to his wife, he said, geez, this guy's up here in his pajamas. We go downstairs, down to the first floor, and I walk out, and they're grabbing me from all sides. You want to go to Chinatown, buddy? You want to go here? Went right back up and put on an old dark suit that didn't give me away, and that was my first trip to New York. That's when I first decided I didn't like it. But these are things that come to my mind as I come back here. Actually, I could give you so many things. I remember Dr. Bell was head of the school board, really one of the major reasons I got the job. And this is true. It was the week before we played Canton, and we were playing, I think it could have been Niles. At any rate, I couldn't go. I was sick. I was in a perspiration, just plain flu sick. And he says, you can't go. He says, we're all necessary, but nobody's we're all useful, but nobody's necessary. And I remember his little phrase. I said, Doc, I gotta go. This is a week before the game. Well, he says, I'm telling you, you aren't going. So then I rigged it up so I could talk to the team at the half, because this was really vital to me. Well, I propped myself up in bed, and phone call came, and I said, what's the score? And the Widows, I asked to be in charge. He said, we're ahead 42-0. This is when old Paul learned a lesson. I think it has to happen to everybody at some stage or the other. Well, these are just reminiscing things that go with my happy years here. Next year, I think it was 1941, I went to Ohio State, and I was 32 years old as the coach. I think probably that was about as young as any of them ever went into Big Ten coaching there, or anywhere. But I will never forget it. The first game, our buses are coming in, and we stop for them to open up so we can go through and in, and Arvine and Swig Thomas, a bunch of guys, are standing there from Massillon. And I got out and shook hands with them, jumped back in the bus. No, the bus is gone. So I had to go in myself. Well, I get in there and I can't get in the game. I don't have a ticket. So I go out and I get pebbles, and I'm throwing it up where the training room is to create enough noise that they'll look out and I can get in. And the guy looked out, the trainer, he said, what are you doing down here? And I said, I don't have a ticket. Come on. I tried to tell this ticket taker who I was, and he didn't look at me very friendly. He thought I was crazy, I guess. But at any rate, that's how I finally got in. They sent down the trainer and a couple people to help me get in. You caused it. And when I saw him afterwards, we played a team and won 12-7. That was Missouri. First time the split tee had ever been used. Don Furrow was there. Tink said, geez, P, 12-7 against this team? Looks like a long year. Little did we know that team was going to play in the Sugar Bowl. And the only game they lost all year was that first one, 12-7. And we didn't know anything about the split tee. We just played it with a 6-2 and made the best we could of it, and it was good enough. Just hung on to our teeth. They went up and down, but they never quite got there. Well, I've rambled on. I want to thank the guys who showed up. I'm fortunate, really. I still have my health. If any of you want to know, my handicap is 19. I'm not beating very many, but I got a select little list. And usually the game is good enough. I'm fortunate, as I said. I tell you, when I come in these days, the kind of stories I hear. There were 3 old guys. This is the kind of stuff they talk about and laugh about. These 3 old guys were talking about how tough things were and how they couldn't remember and all. And the first one said, you know, I get halfway up the steps, and I forget whether I'm going up or coming down. And the second one said, you know, I got the same kind of problems. I got a phone in my hand, and I forget whether I called somebody or somebody's calling me. And the third one says, I'm a fortunate guy. He said, see who's at the door. You know, this is age stories, as you know. This one for the rich old guy at 75 married the young girl, 20. And his friend said, you know, bet you lied about your age. He says, I sure did. I told her I was 95. I just cite these as the things that are happening to the old coaches as we go along. It's but a pleasant, happy world. I'm really a guy. Go to work every morning at 7 or at 9. Get up at 6. I have a pleasant. My sons are with me. I'm fortunate from that standpoint. They are raised to it. They're going to experience the same thing I did. They're so engrossed in what they're doing. The tough part of it, and I never felt like I ever went to work. The difficult thing is, all of a sudden, you shake and, geez, you're 70-some years old. And what happened all the time, you forget about it. And maybe that's good. That's the only thing I found that I don't like about the whole thing. It's been a lovely existence, and it all started here, really. And I can never thank enough people enough times for the happiness that it's brought me. Now with that, I'll answer a few questions, and if you'll stick your hand up, away we go. I understand this is the nature of the meeting. Go ahead, you make your announcement.
One year before Jackie Robinson played in a big league baseball game in September of 1946, Motley and Willis were the first two blacks to play in a major athletic league game. There had been some black players play previous to 1933, when the league was not very well organized. But who broke the color line? Now, the questions that you asked, Paul, will you repeat them, please, because some of the people won't know the questions.
I'll do that. Well, let me say this. I don't want any credit for anything like that. I had Marion and Bill come to camp because they were good people and great football players. And and they know that's the way it was, which is the way, what the heck, this is not the way we figure things in the world we live in. Okay, now if you'll stick up your hand if anybody's got a question. Well, yes, sir.
I played golf with Dr. Schroeder, and I was relating an experience down at Miami University when Miami beat Wittenberg 14-0. Now the question is, was that game played at Miami or at Wittenberg?
Well, was the game played at Miami or Wittenberg? Well, I think it was played at Wittenberg, wasn't it? Well, all I can say is that in those days, Wittenberg, I can remember Wittenberg opened against Ohio State. And things were different. The competitive levels were different. As far where that was played, I know we won one year from Wittenberg 3-0. I was the quarterback. I held the place kick, and it was a 40. It was in the record book. I think it said 46 yards. Of course, it was off a grass field, and the guy who kicked it was Bob Corey, and it was the longest place kick of the year in college football. And today they warm up at that distance. And what you're talking about, I was throwing passes to a guy named Jim Gordon, the Olympic runner.
Right.
Yeah.
And he caught the passes for a touchdown.
Right. It was.
It was at Wittenberg.
Well, I'm just satisfied to say we won. What really happened is Gordon was a world-class sprinter, and the Wittenberg corner wasn't aware of that, or at least he probably couldn't have caught him anyway, and I could get it out ahead of him far enough that he just take it and that was all over. And it was again, I'm fortunate, always the guy that sort of comes in there and throws a big looly poop and he takes it on in. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure. Yeah, yes.
You apologize to Ducky.
Well, Carl, I'll tell you my favorite Ducky Schroeder story. Ducky was playing against this team, and he was sort of what you call a 5-yard, well, I guess better, a 3-yard fullback. And he was plugging it all the way down the field, and he gets down to about the 1-yard line, and Jimmy Price, also from Massillon, said, Jimmy said to him, Ducky, you're tired. You want me to take it over? You know the word, Price scores touchdown. So, and Carl said, oh, he says, Jim. He said, I'll have to go through there anyway. I might as well take the ball. That's our Carl. Yes.
Coach Paul Brown, as a young football coach at Massillon, when you played against Jimmy Aiken's team here in Kent, did he help you in any way, or do you think he gave you ideas towards coaching later on or not?
Well, Jimmy Aiken, when I coached against him here, was a far more experienced coach than I was. And he had, yes, he was good to study, believe me. In fact, the game that when I think about Massillon, I think about the first time we beat Canton. He was there, 7-0, and it was that kind of a thing. Jimmy had double wing back, and he was, as I said, let's put it bluntly, he knew more than I knew. But we gained a little here and there, and fortunately he went on to Akron University, and everything turned out swell. The thing I think about Jimmy, here's a guy coaching the University of Oregon. His son married the daughter of the president, who then fired Jimmy. I always thought like that. Okay, any other question? Well, it looks like,
Paul,
yeah.
at Ohio State, when you first went in there, I had remembered that you had quite a number of Stark County players on some of your first teams there. Do you remember what the percentage might have been?
Well, when I first went to Ohio State, I had a percentage of players from Stark County. When I went there, I was in position to know the players in the state of Ohio I wanted. I mean, and don't think I wasn't getting them. When I think about what I was like, and from a determined, probably overly wrought up way, but well, we took right from Massillon, Horace and Tommy, Butch Anderson, and that was one of the sad ones that to give you an idea, and I'm not at all sure this was a thing to do, but at that stage you just didn't do this, at least not to yours truly. Butch, the night before we were opening the season, and this guy was a good player, Charles Anderson, right from Massillon. He went out on the town. I can even remember the club he went to, Club Lincoln. And we're checking our guys in, and he's not there. So, as I said, just, Butch, you don't do this kind of thing. For the welfare of this team and the future here at Ohio State and their football, you're dismissed. And that's all she wrote. I often wondered, pretty severe. You do a lot of things. This was my own guy. And I had a similar thing happen in Cleveland with Jim, Daniel. Jim, I had made him captain. He came out of Ohio State. And I coached him there, and I wanted to maybe get him to be a little more team responsible. And I made him the captain. Well, that year, the night before we were to play the championship game, he got into an altercation in the middle of the night, involved the police, and I got the police record, so I know. And I made the same words with Jim. He got paid for the game, but these guys know the story. You can't win with this kind of stuff. And at that stage, probably I felt more strongly than ever about it. But it was another case in point. As I said, things have changed. In answer to your question, Earl, we had a lot of them. Don Scott was just then finishing his career at Ohio State. And I didn't have so many Cantons as I had Massillons. And I tell you, I went to Ohio State in 41, and I'm not so sure that 41 Ohio State team could have licked my Massillon team. I say it for a reason. I had guys that if I'd say you put your head here and you butt here, and you know, it never entered in anybody's mind that it might hurt. That's just the way it was. And the guys there were not as fast. We had beaten Kent that spring, and Kent only lost, I think, one game in their league. And that was 50-something, and they didn't even finish the game. I've often wondered, because I didn't have guys who could run like Tommy and Pokey Blunt, and all the way through, we could really run. There was a guy named Jim Russell, and
Catfish.
yeah, Lindell. We had speed. See, football has changed. Today it's bulk in the offensive line because you're allowed to do this with your hands. Our offensive line at Cleveland, I can remember when Groza and McCormick were 255-pound guys, both 4.8s, run. The guards, Lindell, Jim Ray Smith, so you name it, they were 4.6s, 4.65s, this is a 40. If you ever wonder where that 40 started from, I used to have clinics, and I'd talk about measuring guys in the 40-yard sprint. I figured that's about how far you had to run to cover a punt or a kickoff. No other reason, and it sort of stuck from those clinics. I used to do this at Ohio State each year for the Ohio high school people. I did it at Cleveland for all the high school coaches. And it was like the railroad track. It started a certain width. Well, then it got down far enough, they kept on going with it. It became a standard. And today it's a standard measurement. The 40-yard dash is the first thing that they measure. But I was telling you that the game has changed. Today, less bulk, or more bulk. Our offensive line, gosh, I don't think we have anybody under 280. And you think we're big. We just got two guys off of the team that played in the Rose Bowl. Our third choice was a guy named McClendon, defensive end. Ran a 4.9. He's 6'7", 282 pounds. Now this sounds big, but this is just par for the course for these people these days. Another guy from that same Arizona State team was a guy named Warney, WRNE, offensive tackle. He's of Indian descent, 6'8", 322 pounds. Yesterday, I had all the guys from our minicamp yesterday. I was in attendance at this thing yesterday. So as you can see, the game has changed. They throw the ball more. The pass protection is a bigger item. But when you get right down to brass tacks, you better have some natural football players in there. I take sort of a dim view of the number system that we get. They can jump so high and they can standing jump this so far, they can do the cones, they can do all these things. And I say to my guys, how do they play? Because there is a difference. How do they play is the bottom line. Yes, sir.
Where is Gene Hickerson now?
Gene Hickerson, I'll ask my guys.
He's in Cleveland.
He's in Cleveland.
He's a representative for manufacturing, and he calls on Chevrolet primarily.
I see.
How many
He's,
years did he play?
oh, I had him several years, I don't know.
15.
Somebody told me he was down to 210.
No, he's up to about 350.
That's my state man. Yeah. Bobby?
Do you ever lie awake at night or in your spare time wonder what achievements you would have had, what records you might have had you stayed the highest date before the war with all that talent you had?
Well, what would have happened if the war hadn't set in? And don't you think I didn't have them coming? But you can only dream about that, Bobby. You can't do anything about it. I was at Great Lakes, and of course that was an experience too. Yes.
First time you played Michigan, what year was that and what was the score? That was one of the greatest thrills I ever got in my life. That was when you
2020.
What?
2020. You'd have thought we won.
Yeah, I thought you did.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Chrysler was the coach my first year, and right at the end of the game, with about seconds to go, they got a chance to kick the point after touchdown and beat us. Well, and this wasn't from smarts. This was just because I couldn't stand the idea of seeing it happen. They're going to kick the extra point. Geez, I'd send a guy in late, and they'd stop, and I tried it 2 or 3 times, and they had to stop and wait, and couldn't get away with it any longer. The guy missed it. I came home a hero. Everybody thought I was doing a smart thing, and shucks, I just hated to think I was going to have to look at that. Yeah.
What's your view on steroids?
Well, there's no question about it. Steroids, what it does to the human body, if some of these guys would know what it does, well, I'll take one thing, the sex life. It has an effect on it later on. And our league shows and cautions our people about this. I know that this is done in even high schools some places, colleges. We inherit some of it, but we discourage it. And I'll take the guy the natural strength guy really rather than that. Yes, sir.
Did you come up with the trap play for Molly? Was that the original trap play with you, or was that before?
Well, that was trap 32, wasn't it, Mary?
32, 33.
Yes, right or left, and I guess that was just our way of doing things. I believed in throwing the ball, and then things that made it possible to do it and protect the passer, like the draw, the trap, things of this nature, the screen, I did to slow down the rush. We got to the draw play, which did originate with us. We were playing Miami, and Marion was the fullback. Otto went back to throw. He couldn't find anybody. And real quickly, Marion's standing there like this, and he handed the ball to Marion. And he looked around and took off and went. And these people are zinging right on by him, and we got to talking about it. Well, maybe this could be a play. And we ended up by we had draws off tackle, draw trap, draws every way you could think of it, and it was to slow down the pass rush, and it was one of his favorites. It was just what we lucked into it. And the name draw, the first thought that came to my mind was pick play, pick your way. You guys would remember some of this, and then we decided on draw because it said to the offensive man we're drawing him in. And that was the origin of it. Yes, sir.
You saw a more accurate passer than Otto Graham, or was
Otto was the best of them all. He was could loft the soft one. He could throw it with more speed when he had to for length. He could just do it all. He was, well, you name me a guy that got his team into as many championships as Otto Graham. That's why you got to hand it. Who do you know that's projected their team into 10 or 11? I know I went through the World's Championship games as they were billed 11 times. And today they call it the Super Bowl. But Otto was the guy that made me a successful coach, along with some others. But really, it conspired this way. He was he could run with the ball, and unusual. Today, he's had cancer, wears a bag, shoots low. What is he today, a 10? Little? 10 handicap? He's a low handicapper. I saw him play Gonzalez, the great basketball player, at the Bogey Buster several years ago, and it was anybody's game in tennis. He played in the NBA in basketball.
He shot to 73 at Brookside first time on it.
He shot a 73 at Brookside the first time on it. So, but this was just an unusual athlete.
There's a
And,
coach back there.
yeah.
Yellow
Okay.
sweater. Yellow sweater back there.
Gillum? Heck yes. He's a better kicker than there is there. And on top of that, I never forget Luther here. I finally gave up. His horse got he liked wine, I think it was. What happened was I finally let him go, and I get a letter from my friend here saying, all right, get Gillum back. He kicks better drunk than this guy you got there sober. Luther, that's true. So you can see I had a lot of help. Well, to all of you, my thanks. It's been a glorious day for me, and I thank you for being my dear friends.
Thank you so much, Paul Brown. I don't think that we will ever know how many influences, good influences you've had on the game of football. Mr. Football, Paul Brown. Next week, Marty Schottenheimer and his assistant coaches will be here, our last week of the season. Thank you for coming.